take it from here.
A government-issued police interceptor, painted flat black, stripped of every badge, every emblem, every trace of the world it came from, pulls up to the curb and sits there like a threat. No sirens, no markings, just presence. That car did something in 1997 that should have been impossible. It made a Ford Crown Victoria cool. And then, the moment filming wrapped, it disappeared almost as completely as the aliens it was built to chase. What happened next is a story Hollywood never bothered to tell, so we're going to tell it. Hi, my name is Johnny, and this is American Muscle, the show that goes looking for the cars Hollywood forgot. Hit that subscribe button, and let's get into it. The Crown Victoria's real-world identity. Before we talk about what Men in Black did to the Crown Victoria, we need to talk about what the Crown Victoria actually was. Because without that context, you miss the entire joke and the entire genius of the choice. The Ford LTD Crown Victoria arrived in 1983 as a full-size rear-wheel drive American sedan built on the Panther platform, a chassis so over-engineered and so stubbornly analog that Ford kept it in production until 2011. Let that land for a second. A platform architecture conceived in the late 1970s was still rolling off the assembly line when the iPhone 4 existed. That is either a testament to brilliant engineering or catastrophic corporate inertia, and honestly, it might be both. By the mid-1990s, the Crown Victoria had become the default vehicle of institutional America. Law enforcement loved it. Taxi fleets loved it. The Secret Service ran it. The FBI ran it. If you needed a car that could absorb 100,000 miles of abuse, carry 4 adults and a trunk full of equipment, and still start every single morning without complaint, you bought a Crown Vic. It was not glamorous. It was not fast by any meaningful standard. The 4.6-liter modular V8 produced around 190 horsepower in standard trim, which is the kind of number that sounds reasonable until you remember this engine was pushing a vehicle that weighed over 4,000 pounds. The point is, everyone knew what a Crown Victoria meant when they saw one. Fleet vehicle, government property, someone official is behind that wheel, and they are probably not happy to see you. That cultural shorthand, that immediate legibility, is exactly what director Barry Sonnenfeld and production designer Bo Welch were reaching for when they started building the world of Men in Black. The Crown Victoria wasn't chosen despite being ordinary. It was chosen because it was ordinary, and then they did something extraordinary to it. Men in Black, the film and the car's role. Men in Black went into production in 1996 and hit theaters on July 2, 1997. The film was adapted from Lowell Cunningham's Marvel Comics series by screenwriter Ed Solomon, directed by Sonnenfeld, and starred Will Smith as James Darrell Edwards III, soon to become Agent J, alongside Tommy Lee Jones as the veteran Agent K. The budget landed at approximately $90 million. The worldwide gross cleared $589 million. Nobody was surprised when they greenlit a sequel. Now, here is what the car needed to do narratively. The Men in Black organization in the film operates in the gaps between the visible world and the one most people aren't cleared to see. Their headquarters is hidden under a ventilation tower in Battery Park. Their suits are black. Their weapons are impossible. Their vehicles needed to communicate the same thing. This is the government, but not the government you know. This is the version of the government that actually handles things. A Ferrari would have been wrong. A Hummer would have been wrong. Something exotic or aggressive would have announced itself, which is precisely what the MIB cannot do. They need to be invisible in plain sight. They need a car that reads as federal and boring and beneath your attention, right up until it isn't. The Crown Victoria, blacked out, debadged, and riding on custom wheels, threads that needle perfectly. Your brain registers it as official and moves on. That is the entire point. Agent K even explains the philosophy directly. We are not meant to be noticed. The car is a physical extension of that operating principle, and when the turbines spool up and the thing launches down a New York City street at speeds a stock Crown Vic couldn't dream of, the contrast is the joke and the thrill simultaneously. You thought you knew what this car was. You were wrong. The build. What Sony and the production did to it. So, what exactly did the production do to these cars, and who did the work? Sony Pictures worked with several automotive suppliers and prop houses during production, and the builds that ended up on screen were not simple cosmetic jobs. Every chrome element, Every factory badge, every piece of trim that identified the vehicle as a civilian or law enforcement unit was removed. The exterior received a custom flat black finish. Not gloss, flat. The distinction matters. Gloss black reads aggressive and stylized. Flat black reads institutional and deliberate, like something that was painted this color for a functional reason rather than an aesthetic one. The wheels were replaced with custom units that maintained the utilitarian look, while eliminating anything that felt factory standard. Black wall tires, no hubcaps. Nothing that caught the light unnecessarily. The interior received the same treatment. Stripped of anything extraneous, replaced with custom instrumentation and equipment panels that suggested a vehicle outfitted for surveillance and rapid response. The devices and gadgetry you see in the cabin were prop builds layered over a functional interior, designed to read as classified hardware without actually being anything. Good production design tricks your brain into filling in the blanks, and the MIB Crown Vic interior does exactly that. Here is where it gets genuinely interesting. Multiple versions of the car were built for production, which is standard practice for any film that's going to put its hero vehicle through serious work. Estimates from prop community research and production documentation suggest at least 4 to 6 Crown Victorias were prepared for the film. The breakdown followed the familiar pattern: hero cars for close-up work and interior scenes, stunt cars for sequences that were going to abuse the vehicle, and background or atmosphere cars for wide shots and establishing scenes. The specific mechanical modifications on the stunt cars went well beyond cosmetics. To achieve the performance sequences depicted on screen, particularly the highway tunnel chase and several high-speed New York street scenes, the stunt units were upgraded with suspension modifications and engine tuning that extracted meaningfully more performance than the stock 4.6. These weren't cars that were going to be asked to look fast. They were going to be driven fast in a city surrounded by crew, and everything underneath needed to be capable of delivering that without killing anyone. Professional picture car prep in this era was serious business. The hero car, the one Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones actually sat in for close-up driving footage, was maintained in show condition throughout production. That car was not going to get wrapped around anything. On-set stories and production, lore. Now, the on-set stories. This is the part where the production gets human and weird and interesting, which is my favorite part of any of these deep dives, because cars don't exist in isolation. They exist in the context of the people who drove them and the conditions they were built under. Will Smith has been publicly candid in interviews over the years about his relationship with the film and with the aesthetic world Sonnenfeld built around it. The suit, the sunglasses, the car. There's a reason that combination became one of the most recognizable images in late 90s cinema. Smith understood what the visual language was communicating, and he leaned into it. Sonnenfeld, for his part, had a very specific directorial instinct about how the cars should appear on screen. He did not want them to look like movie cars. He wanted them to look like surveillance vehicles that happened to be parked on a Manhattan street. The flat black finish, the restraint of the design. These were not accidental. Sonnenfeld reportedly pushed back against any modification that made the vehicles feel too theatrical. The whole point was plausibility within absurdity. A blacked-out Crown Vic in New York City in 1997 was weird enough to notice, but not weird enough to call the police about. That's the sweet spot the production was trying to live in. Tommy Lee Jones, in his characteristically laconic way, apparently had little to say about the cars, specifically, and everything to say about getting the scenes done correctly. If you know anything about Tommy Lee Jones on a film set, you know that the man is not there to chat about prop vehicles. He is there to work. The Crown Vic was a tool. He used it. That tracks completely with Agent K as a character, which is either good casting or very good luck. Probably both. One detail that surfaces in production accounts is the sheer logistical challenge of filming a fleet of blacked-out government vehicles on actual New York City streets. The city cooperation required for those sequences, the permits, the road closures, the coordination with NYPD was substantial. New York in the mid-90s was not the simplified production environment it has sometimes been since. Getting a convoy of ominous federal-looking cars through Midtown without causing a genuine public incident required serious advance work. From everything documented, they pulled it off. No major incidents. No one actually called a tip line about a suspicious federal motorcade. The New Yorkers who noticed presumably assumed it was some other agency doing some other thing and went back to their coffee, because that is what New Yorkers do. After the cameras stopped, where did they go? Filming wrapped. The cars had done their job, and then, as happens with almost every movie vehicle that doesn't belong to a franchise with an active preservation budget, the question became what to do with them. Here is the part of this story that should genuinely frustrate anyone who cares about automotive history, because it is the same story, told again, with the same ending. Sony Pictures, like most major studios operating in the late 1990s, did not have a robust or systematic approach to preserving production vehicles. This wasn't malice, it was indifference, which is in some ways worse. The institutional framework simply didn't exist in the way it does today. Vehicles were assets during production and liabilities after. Storage costs money. Insurance costs money. A fleet of 4 to 6 custom-built Crown Victorias sitting in a studio lot costs money every single month they aren't being used. The standard disposal pipeline for production vehicles in this era ran through a few channels. Some cars went to prop houses, specialist companies that maintained inventories of vehicles available for rent to future productions. Some went to studio auctions, either public or industry internal. Some were transferred to promotional use, showing up at mall events and press appearances before eventually being sold or donated. And some, particularly the stunt cars that had taken real damage during production, went straight to the crusher or the junkyard, because the cost of restoring them to roadworthy condition exceeded any reasonable return. The MIB Crown Victorias hit all of these channels to varying degrees, and that dispersal is why the trail fractures almost immediately after production closes. What we know is that at least one hero condition car entered promotional circulation in the period immediately following the film's 1997 release. Men in Black was a massive summer tentpole, and Sony was not shy about capitalizing on its iconography. The suits, the neuralizer, the car. These were licensing and promotional gold. A blacked-out Crown Vic at a mall appearance or a promotional event photographed extremely well and communicated the film's visual identity immediately to anyone who'd seen the poster. What happened to those promotional units after the campaign cycle ended is where the documentation gets sparse. Promotional vehicles often pass through multiple hands, from studio to marketing agency to regional promoter to private buyer. And each handoff is another opportunity for the paperwork trail to degrade. By the time a promotional vehicle reaches its third or fourth owner, it may have no documentation connecting it to the original production at all. The stunt cars are, almost certainly, gone. When you build a vehicle specifically to absorb punishment in a film sequence and then put it through that punishment, what remains afterward is rarely worth the effort of preserving. One credible account from the prop community suggests that at least 2 of the stunt units were sold to a salvage operation in the Los Angeles area shortly after production wrapped. No VINs were flagged. No archivist made a call. They went the way the fleet vehicles always go when nobody's watching. The cars that surfaced, auctions, museums, and private hands. Now here is where it gets more interesting, because unlike some movie cars that vanish so completely, there's almost nothing to track. The Men in Black Crown Victoria has a documented surface history, meaning cars that are confirmed to have appeared publicly with some degree of provenance attached. In 2012, a Crown Victoria identified as a Men in Black production vehicle appeared in a charity auction associated with a Hollywood memorabilia event. The documentation presented with the car included production photographs and a letter of provenance from a prop house that had held the vehicle since the late 1990s. The car sold. The buyer was private. The sale price was not publicly disclosed, which is actually fairly common for mid-tier movie car transactions that don't go through the major auction houses like Barrett-Jackson or Bonhams. The car has not resurfaced publicly since. A second confirmed appearance occurred around 2007, when a Crown Vic matching the MIB specification showed up at a specialty car show in the Los Angeles area. The owner at that time claimed direct acquisition from a Sony prop sale in the early 2000s. Whether that provenance holds up to rigorous documentation standards is genuinely difficult to verify from the outside, because Sony's prop sale records from that era are not publicly accessible, and the chain of custody between a studio prop sale and a private car show entrant can get murky very quickly. There is also a car currently held by a private collector in the American Southwest, who has maintained it in what is described by people who have seen it as screen-accurate condition, flat black finish, correct interior configuration, custom wheels. This collector has reportedly declined multiple purchase offers over the years. The reasoning, at least as it has been characterized secondhand, is simply that some things are not for sale. I respect that enormously, even when it makes the research harder. Good for them. The Academy Museum of Motion Pictures has featured men in black memorabilia, including suits and props, but as of the most recent documentation available, no Crown Victoria from the production is on permanent display there. Honestly, this tracks with the general pattern across Hollywood institutions. Costumes and props get preserved, vehicles get sold, and everyone acts surprised 20 years later when nobody knows where the cars went. I have said this before, and I will keep saying it until someone at a major studio actually does something about it. The myth, the replicas, and the confusion. We need to talk about the replica problem because it is significant, and ignoring it would be dishonest. The Men in Black Crown Victoria is not a complicated car to replicate. You need a late 90s Crown Victoria, which you can find on Craigslist for somewhere between $1,500 and $4,000, depending on condition and location. You need flat black paint, correct wheels, and a willingness to strip the badging. Total investment, maybe $8,000 to $12,000 if you do the interior work properly. The result is visually indistinguishable from a production vehicle in photographs. This means the replica population is enormous. Fan builds, promotional replicas, cars built for events and appearances, cars built just because someone loved the film and wanted one in their driveway. None of this is wrong. Building a tribute car to something you love is a legitimate and honorable tradition in car culture, but it creates a verification problem that is genuinely difficult to solve. When a car shows up at a show or an online listing claiming Men in Black provenance, the burden of documentation is high, and the tools to meet that burden are limited. VINs help because production vehicle VINs can theoretically be cross-referenced against studio records, but those records are not always accessible and not always complete. Production photographs help because specific details like interior configurations or damage patterns can sometimes be matched to on-screen footage. But absent a clear, continuous, and documented chain of custody from the Sony production to the current owner, any provenance claim for a Men in Black crown Vic has to be held with appropriate skepticism. This is not cynicism. This is just the reality of a car that is easy to replicate, came from a studio with incomplete preservation records, and has been out in the world for nearly 30 years. The replica problem doesn't mean no real cars survived. It means you have to do the work to tell them apart, and most people don't. What we know for certain today. So, where does that leave us? What can we actually say with confidence about the fate of the Men in Black Crown Victorias, as opposed to what we suspect or hope or have heard from someone who heard it from someone else? Here is the honest accounting. At least one car, possibly two, survived production in hero condition and entered private hands through a combination of studio prop sales and promotional cycles. One of those is documented through a charity auction in 2012. Its current location is private and not publicly confirmed. A second may be held by the Southwest collector, mentioned earlier, though that provenance, while credible, has not been independently certified through studio documentation. The stunt cars are almost certainly gone. The evidence for their survival is thin to non-existent, and the pattern of how stunt vehicles from this era were disposed of is consistent with destruction or salvage. It would be a genuine surprise if one surfaced with clean documentation at this point. At least one car is likely in the greater Los Angeles area or California more broadly, because that is where the production was based and where the prop pipeline leads. Whether it's in a collection, a garage, a storage unit, or a barn behind someone's house in the San Fernando Valley is genuinely unknown. What we do not have is a single confirmed, documented, publicly accessible hero car from the Men in Black production. No museum display. No major auction result with clean provenance. No official Sony preservation acknowledgement. The car that made a Crown Victoria cool in 1997 is, for the most part, as invisible today as the organization it was built to represent. Whether that's poetic or just frustrating depends entirely on your tolerance for Hollywood's relationship with its own history. Mine is pretty low, if I'm being honest. The 1997 Ford LTD Crown Victoria from Men in Black did something genuinely difficult. It took a car that the entire country associated with traffic stops and taxi queues and made it mythological. That is the power of the right vehicle and the right story at the right moment. And Bo Welch and Barry Sonnenfeld understood that completely. The cars themselves, the actual physical objects that carried Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones through the streets of New York for a summer shoot in 1996, deserved better than the fate Hollywood typically delivers. They deserve documentation, preservation, a chain of custody someone actually bothered to maintain. Instead, they got the standard treatment, used hard, dispersed quietly, and left for enthusiasts to chase 28 years later. If you know something, if you have a credible lead on a confirmed production vehicle, if your uncle bought a weird flat black Crown Vic from a studio sale in the early 2000s and it's been in the garage ever since, the comment section is right below this video, and I am not even slightly joking when I say, I want to hear from you. I'm Johnny, this is American Muscle. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one, because we are nowhere near done. The cars are out there. We just have to go find them. See you in the next lane.